While Jason Aaron was writing his seminal run on Thor, some other writers got to work writing stories for Thor's side characters, namely Thor's siblings Loki and Angela. This was especially prominent during Jane Foster's time as the Goddess of Thunder, which are the stories I'm going to be focusing on. Today we take a look at Loki, Agent of Asgard, Thor and Loki, the Tenth Realm, Angela, Asgard's Assassin, 1602 Witch Hunter Angela, Angela, Queen of Hell, and Vote Loki. Written and illustrated in its entirety by the team of Al Ewing and Lee Garbett, Loki, Agent of Asgard actually starts while Thor is still worthy, back in 2014. The book opens with a recap, reminding new readers that this Loki is the resurrected version of the old Loki who inhabits the now-aged body of the revived kid Loki in order to save the world, and has likely inherited some of that goodness and is trying to change into a good person, or at least not the god of evil. It's very confusing, but the gist of it all is not evil Loki on a redemption arc. The first issue reveals that Loki is working for the All-Mother Triumvirate of Asgard, consisting of Freya, Gaia, and Idun, in order for them removing his old deeds from Asgard's records. Loki goes to Avengers Tower to both use the Sword of Truth to cure Thor of a plague that is making him unworthy, and to remove his bad deeds from the world databases, essentially erasing his villainous history. Plus, Thor and Loki are on good terms. Unfortunately, the plague which he delivers to the All-Mother is actually an evil version of Loki. Issue 2 sees Loki tasked with bringing wayward Asgardians back to Asgard, starting with the enchantress and master thief Lorelei, one of Loki's former flanks. After failing to stop one of Lorelei's heists and meeting a human named Verity who can see through all of lies, Loki finally catches up to Lorelei and reveals that he's putting together a heist of his own. We then get an issue where old Loki goes back in time to trick Odin into creating the Sword of Truth, which was used by the legendary hero Sigurd before he lost it. While we don't quite know what old Loki is planning, it makes for a fun story. Back in the present, Loki is having dinner with Verity when Sigurd comes to steal back the Sword of Truth. He manages to best Loki in a duel after dropping them into a dumpster before heading off to try and make a deal with the sorcerer to escape death in Valhalla, since the Valkyries hate him. As it turns out, the sorcerer is Mephisto, who condemns Sigurd to hell. But as it also turns out, Loki tricked Mephisto into banishing Mephisto and sending Sigurd to Asgard, where he's put in prison by the All-Mother. The first arc wraps up in issue 5, with Loki and Lorelei sneaking into Asgard to break Sigurd out of prison. They sneak past the all-seeing Heimdall by having Thor make a distraction, then sneak past the traps by sending photos to Verity so she can figure out the illusions. Sigurd then gets out, as him getting trapped was part of the plan to convince Lorelei to get Loki into Asgard. Lorelei and Sigurd leave, allowing Loki to spot a strange map with 10 realms, as well as confront old Loki. Loki stabs old Loki with the Sword of Truth, revealing that old Loki is actually from the future, and just being true to himself, as he will try to bring Asgard to ruins like a true god of evil. The All-Mother then arrives and reveals that old Loki is their real agent of Asgard, as they are comfortable in the fact that they know the future, leaving current Loki dejected. We then take a sideshow over to Thor and Loki, the Tenth Realm, a limited series written by the same team, with writing help from Jason Aaron and artistic help from Simone Bianchi. It is also technically part of the original Sync crossover, but that isn't important to Loki at all. Thor learns about the Angels of Heaven, whom the Asgardians fought long ago, and when the Queen of Angels killed Thor's sister, Odin split them off from the World Tree and banished them. Thor decides to recruit Loki's help to break into Heaven, as Loki owes him from their previous heist. Heaven also happens to be the 10th realm he saw on Asgard's hidden map, which has him intrigued. Once in Heaven, Thor and Loki are attacked by angry, violent angels who want nothing to do with the Asgardians. While Thor fights, Loki sneaks off and tries to kill the Queen of Angels, but she realizes that he is a frost giant and convinces him to talk with her. Meanwhile, Angela of the Guardians of the Galaxy, the fiercest angel to ever live who managed to escape from Heaven, is manipulated by old Loki into going back there. There, she engages in combat with Thor, while the Queen of Angels explains to Loki that angels feel that honor is useless and work only to win and make as much money as possible, betraying whoever they have to in the process. In the end, Angela defeats Thor, but he is taken in by the new Mistress of Strategies, who turns out to be Loki, who gender bent himself to better fit in. Loki then takes a bunch of Death Fleets to kill Odin, but has them destroy themselves and frees Odin and Odin's brother Cole from their prison. Thor, meanwhile, breaks himself out by summoning a storm. Thor and Angela have a rematch, but Odin arrives and reveals that Angela is actually Thor's sister, causing the Queen of Angels to exile Angela from Heaven. Thor, Loki, and Odin then head off, as does Angela separately. The story itself here is fine, and the art is fantastic, but it's not super deep. Seeing Thor and Loki interact is always fun, though, and it's a great introduction to Angela outside of her brief appearances in Guardians of the Galaxy. Back to Agent of Asgard, Loki and Verity are kidnapped by Doctor Doom, who has gone to the future and seen that the old Loki had destroyed, so he decides to stop Loki. Loki uses Lorelei's amulet to make Verity invisible before Doom notices her, then kinda fights Doom, Doom believing that his story is better because it ends, and then he traps Loki in a time-space box. Verity manages to convince Dr. Doom's goddaughter, the super genius Valeria Richards, to free Loki, saying that the future might not be set in stone and that someone could use Loki's power for evil if he's stolen. While Doom goes off to quell riots, Valeria frees Loki and uses the Sword of Truth to stop the riots, as the people were being manipulated by hate waves. This then ties into Axis, a line-wide crossover where a bunch of Marvel characters had their personalities inverted, including Loki, the unworthy Thor, and Lorelei's sister Enchantress. The rest of Axis isn't really important to Loki's story, but what is are the tie-in events in Agent of Asgard number 8 and 9. Loki and the Enchantress have hooked up and are acting as superheroes, but have also become super arrogant as their humility has been inverted as well. Loki accidentally pushes away Verity, Lorelei, and Sigurd, made worse by the fact that Loki and Enchantress then arrest Lorelei and Sigurd for robbing banks, trapping them in Asgard. Loki then battles a bestial Thor on the moon and manages to lift Mjolnir, proving himself inherently worthy, although he's inverted, so that's just his inverted version. Loki then beats Thor right as the personality inversion gets undone, causing Loki to drop Mjolnir and Thor to laugh at Loki, claiming the fight never happened, which the true Thor and Loki never really did, so it's fair. To top things off, Loki is faced with a vision of Kid Loki, the crime that could not be forgiven. This cover is also an homage to Loki's first appearance way back in Journey into Mystery number 85, which is neat. Loki and Thor then have some fun with Angela, which we'll get to later, but for the purposes of this retrospective, I'd rather go through the rest of Agent of Asgard all at once. You see, Loki and Verity have made up, but due to some after effects of the Axis spell, Loki can no longer lie, which leads to him revealing to Thor and Verity what he'd done to his child self, leaving Verity confused and Thor enraged. Thor then beats Loki to a pulp and breaks the Sword of Truth, which obviously deals with the symbolic meaning of the truth being let out. Loki is left in Asgard, where he is promptly rejected by everyone there, including Freya and Odin. Loki returns to Earth, where old Loki shows up and convinces Verity that Loki is truly evil before strapping Loki down to reveal his plan. In essence, old Loki manipulated everything, as in his timeline nobody trusted him even after his redemption, since he was still the god of lies. So he came back in time to turn the current Loki into his future self to destroy the weakened Asgard of the 21st century, and become ruler of the realms. Issue 13 is a phenomenal issue about him confronting his past selves, both his evil self and his child self, in order to determine who he really is and will be. With the help of some kind words from the distraught Verity, Loki decides that a lie is really just a story, and blows away both his past self and his future self, declaring himself the god of stories. In the real world, too, he sends himself and old Loki 8 months in the future to the incursions. Basically, two universes are smashing into each other at Midgard and are both going to destroy each other. So old Loki convinces Hela, Queen of Hell, that destroying Midgard and Asgardia will save the universe. So he kills Baldur the Good and frees the World Serpent to attack Asgard with Hel's armies. In order to counter this armada, Frey and Odin come out to arm the Asgardians with AKs and Gatling guns, which is just plain awesome. The semi-amnesic Loki convinces Verity to tell her story, revealing that she had few friends due to her truth-seeing powers, which she got from ingesting a truth ring as a child. Loki then traps her story, her soul, in a magic ring to preserve her life through the incursions. They then go to Asgard, where an epic battle is raging and Asgard isn't doing so well, even with Odin calling the armies of the dead to help fight. Freya sacrifices herself to kill the Midgard serpent, then gets a dedicated splash page of her riding in on a horse wearing sunglasses, because awesome. Loki even manages to get old Loki to run away by convincing him that he won't become his future self because he won't care what others think of him. The universe then ends, landing Loki and Verity's ghost in between universes, confronted with those who sit above in shadow. Essentially the gods of the gods, they feed off the gods' stories, which Loki conveniently trapped in a bubble to save through the incursions, explaining why the Asgardians come out of the event with minimal changes. Loki explains that people create stories to explain things, and nobody knows if the stories are so powerful that they create what is real, like magic. He then suggests that if the humans created the gods could have created those who sit above in shadow. This makes them vanish into nothingness, revealing old Loki, who is really just the Loki who was so fed up with what people wanted him to be that he went back in time and made a future where he could be happy, which is current Loki's timeline. Loki embraces his future self and assuringly tells Verity that stories will always go on, then draws a door to the next one. It's a really satisfying conclusion to a really satisfying story. It's probably one of my favorite modern comics, I think even beating out Aaron's Thor run, which is really impressive. I really recommend you pick this one up if you can. It's only 17 issues, all of which fit into the narrative perfectly. And what a narrative it is, about magic, creation, lies, and stories. I really hope Marvel lets Loki's development here stick, as you and Garbett have worked hard to create a story that is insanely likable with an insanely likable character with a lot of potential. Now that we've seen Loki's story in the end of the world, it's time to see what Angela was up to while Loki rewrote his story. Entitled Angela, Asgard's Assassin, the 6-issue ongoing series was written by Kieran Gillen and penciled by Phil Jimenez, although it might as well be a limited series with how compact it is. As stated earlier, this series takes place right after Loki's Axis tie-in, but it's not super relevant there. Basically, Angela has stolen a baby and has teamed up with her old sorceress friend Sarah to run away. They wind up in Limbo, where after fighting off some weird horse people, the unworthy Odinson and the Asgardians show up to steal the baby back, as it is actually the new heir to the throne of Asgard, despite Freya not being pregnant at all in any other series, although who am I to say how Asgardian pregnancies work? Angela fights the Asgardians before Sarah takes her and the baby to Earth. Sarah explains through a long-winded explanation to an Earth girl that Angela, or not Angela, well, Angela does too, but angels, all of them, do everything in deals, where every action is done in exchange for another action. For example, since the angels raised Angela, she owes them something. The Asgardians catch up, since Angela is being followed by the all-seeing Heimdall, so Sarah takes her to a desecrated magic wedding altar where Angela steals some armor that prevents Heimdall from seeing her. Angela then calls her old friends the Guardians of the Galaxy, and after accidentally summoning some assassins from Hell, Angela reveals that Sarah not only died and came back, but that the baby is imbued with the essence of Surtur, the fire demon, as it was conceived in Surtur's ashes. With this knowledge, the Guardians agree to take Angela to heaven. As it turns out, heaven is running out of fuel since it was fueled by the curse Odin put on it, which is now broken, courtesy of Odinson and Loki back when they first learned of its existence. A three-way battle between the Angels, Guardians, and Asgardians ensues, climaxing in Angela, Odinson, and the Guardians reaching the thruster of heaven and Angela yeeting the baby into it. Surtur's energy inside the baby fuels heaven, and when that's done, Angela flies in and rescues the baby, returning it to the Asgardians. By simultaneously paying her debt to heaven by letting it live, and to the Asgardians for being stolen by giving them a pure daughter to replace her, Odin and Freya let Angela go, and she promptly confronts Sarah, who is actually Malekith the Accursed, who helped Angela so the baby could live longer and cause more destruction. Malekith tells Angela that Sarah is alive in hell, so Angela sets off to rescue her. Oh, and aside from the baby being named Lotha, it's heavily implied that she's not cured of Surtur's influence. It's a pretty solid series with a nice through line of Angela's ideals versus her morals, and her finding a way to achieve both in the end, by getting her morals of saving people to line up with her ideals of paying back debts. It's not bad for her first solo outing. Before Angela can go to Hell, though, we get back to the end of the universe, and Angela finds herself as an inhabitant on Battleworld. 1602 Witch Hunter Angela, written by Margaret Bennett and Kieran Gillen with art by Stephanie Hans, acts as a spiritual successor to Agent of Asgard that casts Angela and Sarah in the roles of medieval witch hunters. They are tasked with hunting down Faustians, or people that made deals with the Enchantress to access her fairy magic. Their first target is Bucky Barnes. Their second is Eddie Brock, aka Venom, whom they team up with the Guardians of the Galaxy to kill. The Enchantress also tells them that killing one more Faustian will result in Sarah's death. This doesn't deter them, though, as they cure the untouchable Anna Maria of her Faustian curse, causing the Enchantress to kill Sarah. This leads Angela to the Fairy Realm, where Angela kills Enchantress and takes her place as Fairy Queen, then revives Sarah. Sarah then gets the actual William Shakespeare to write Angela into one of his plays, immortalizing her. The series also deals with the power of stories and has nice references to various Marvel characters, but it's just fine overall. The tone is a bit wonky, with the fourth wall breaks feeling like they don't fit the story and setting. After Secret Wars ends, everyone's back in the real world, and the mainline Angela can finally finish her mission of rescuing Sarah from Hell, and Angela, Queen of Hell. Again written by Bennett, and this time illustrated by Kim Jacinto. The first 5 issues see Angela go through Hell, with her succeeding in rescuing Sarah at the end of the first issue, finally confirming the two of them as a couple. However, the only way for Angela to bring Sarah back to life is for her to become Queen of Hell, which she can do by overcoming 3 trials put in place by Hela. To do this, they team up with an alternate universe version of Leia, Hela's rebellious handmaiden. The first trial is Fear, which Angela overcomes by having already gone through her biggest fear, losing Sarah. The second trial is Chaos, which sees Angela and Sarah relive their first meeting and parallels of their origins, both having killed to survive. They then find the Angels, who are kept as slaves in Hell as part of their punishment for kidnapping baby Angela, so Angela frees them all. She is then attacked by Scourge the Executioner, Balder, and Tyr, the generals of Hell, manages to defeat them all before being attacked by Bor, Odin's father. Angela crushes Bor by rallying her angels around their new flag, Broken Chains. Angela's third trial, then, is Pain, where she learns that she would have gone down a dark path if not for Sarah, but Sarah would have achieved great things anyways. Sarah chooses Angela anyways, and with Angela having passed the 3 trials, Hela shows up to fight for her throne. The battle is fiercely and beautifully epic, with Angela, Sarah, Leia, and Loki's former pet hellhound Thor fighting and defeating Hela, with Sarah crowning Angela the new Queen of Hell. Angela promptly revives Sarah, frees the angels from servitude by giving them their own realm of the dead in Elysium, frees Leia from her servitude, makes her decisions unchangeable, then promptly abdicates the throne to Baldur to vibe with Sarah. The first arc is really well done, with beautiful art and a nice combination of action, heart, and humor, with the narrative through line of breaking chains. It definitely changed my neutral opinion of Angela from her first two series into a positive one. The last two issues of these series, that's right, this ongoing, is very short as well, sees Angela and Sarah move happily into New York and adopt Leia as their child. They and Thor then run into the fairy queen Angela from Secret Wars, as she was truly immortalized in Shakespeare's story. She is pissed that she is alone and has no realm to rule, so Leia gives everyone a flash forward of the next 7 years of their lives before naming Fairy Queen Angela as ruler of Elysium, where the dead Secret War Sarah also is. Everyone is happy with this, providing a pretty swell ending to Angela's solo story, as her 3 series really are all one long journey, which is always nice to see in comics these days. The last of the series I want to cover is writer Christopher Hastings and artist Benjamin Foss's Vote Loki miniseries. In short, Loki tries to run for the president of the US, but the story is told through reporter Nisa. The entire thing is a parody of the American elections, which is certainly something. Nisa keeps revealing evil stuff that Loki is doing, but he keeps winning people over with his charisma and by promising to break the system. In the end, when people realize that Loki has nothing new to say and no policies, they turn against him. Even though it's revealed that Loki threw his spot for some money, my personal headcanon is that Malekith sent him to try and take over Midgard to simplify the War of the Realms. It's an okay series, occasionally chuckle-worthy, occasionally a slog. And that's all for Loki and Angela's Little Adventures. Agent of Asgard is by far the best one, but Queen of Hell is also really solid, and the through lines for both characters are amazing. Come back next time when Loki and Angela converge with Thor for the War of the Realms. See you then.